Hello and welcome to my greenhouse. My name is Jane Lindsay and I run the Studio Club. Today I am going to show you how I grow sweet peas. Sweet peas are one of my favourite flowers. For about 10 years, around about a decade ago, I grew cut flowers commercially. From my garden here, I had an organic cut flower farm. And I used to sell at farmers markets and deliver bouquets, send bouquets nationwide. I did a bit of wholesale. I was a wedding florist, and right at the heart of that were sweet peas. And I used to plant hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of plants every year. Now it's very different. Around about 2010 I became ill and I gave up growing the flowers because it was just too much hard physical work, and I kind of changed my garden and my business. I changed my garden, and now, although I grow lots and lots of cut flowers, they are for me and for personal gifts. So what I'm going to show you today is how I grow cut flowers, or how I grow sweet peas rather, and how I have kind of simplified the whole process so that it fits into my life. So first of all, here I am. These are my sweet pea modules. Now, these are plastic, and I know that, we're all very aware of use of plastic, but I have not bought anything since I stopped growing cut flowers commercially. So that's 2012. Now, I suspect that I bought these probably in around about 2010, 2008. So they have been in use for growing cut flowers for all of that time, and they grow sweet peas in the spring, and actually I often grow things like broad beans in them as well. And as you can see, they are perfectly fine, and they have been used and reused and reused, and they're amazing things. And the trick to keeping black plastic, particularly all plastics probably, in a good state is that when you have finished using them, you put them somewhere in the dark, because it is the sunshine that makes them all that brittle, snappy way. So these are special modules, and you can see they open up like a book. The really brilliant things about these are these lines, grooves going down there. So what happens is that the seed germinates, that little root comes out, and it is drawn down those grooves in the plastic right to the bottom. And this is the second great thing about these. The bottoms are open. So you'll get the roots coming down here, and then when they hit the air, because they are held sort of above the ground, when they hit the air, that naturally prunes the roots. And instead of going down, they come out. So you've got a really good root system in these. So that's what I use. The important thing is that you want depth for sweet peas. So you don't want to use like a little module tray. And that's why the sweet peas that you often get in garden centres don't do as well as home sown ones. It's simply because they grow them in those really shallow pots. So that's my pots. Second thing, sweet peas. I used to grow all of my varieties separately, and I would label all of these ones individually so they didn't get muddled up, that kind of thing, and then I would plant them out in a mix. And it occurred to me a few years ago, it's a waste of my time. I find labelling to be tedious, and I lose labels really quickly. And it was pointless, because I don't want to have separate groups of sweet peas. What I want is that wonderful abundance, that mixture of colours. So now I just put all of my sweet peas into one packet, and then they will naturally do that. Third thing on my desk is a jar, and in here I have a bit of fabric and about a teaspoon of white spirit. What happens is that the white spirit goes onto the bit of fabric, and now I'm just going to put the fabric onto my table here and pour on my sweet peas. Now, the reason for this is, you might see I'm growing in a quite ramshackle greenhouse here, that has a very active mouse population. This is a reclaimed greenhouse that my husband built for me, and it is absolutely wonderful. It's my favourite place, but we do get a lot of mice in it. So mice love sweet peas. However, mice do not love the smell of white spirit. So before I sow them, I'm putting them into this little bit of fabric that has white spirit in it, and that would just scent them with the white spirit so that the mice will stay away. If you have some, you can also use seaweed extract. If you're going to do that, put the seaweed extract completely neat into a jar and soak your sweet peas overnight. So it takes a little bit longer, but if you have seaweed extract, you may as well use that. If you have white spirit and not so much time, do it this way. And then I will just put the fabric back in my jar once I've finished using it. This is my compost. It is peat-free compost. It's a nice meaty mixture. This one is from Dalesfoot. Right, so now I'm going to just fill up my nodules. The important thing is that you don't want any air pockets, so as you fill them you need to see how much that went down. So you want this to be absolutely full, okay? Sometimes you see people and they only fill it up to kind of like an inch in the top, and that's really a waste of time because you are wasting all of that space and nutrition. So I take my fabric, unwrap my sweet peas, which are now glistening, and then just put one on the top of each. Often you see instructions that you should plant 2 or 3 seeds into each module of something, and then it will say, and then thin out if both germinate. But I think this advice came from when germination rates were really not very good. And now most seeds that you buy have a really good germination rate. In my garden now, I have 2 tunnels of sweet peas, which are about 10 foot long each. And then I have 4 hazel kind of structures. So I still do grow a lot of sweet peas. And I also grow them for friends as well. So there we go. And then just push them down into the compost to make sure that they are in. So just like that, we have 4 times 8 sweet peas, so 32 sweet peas, which is a lot. I would say that, so this would do you 2 massive hazel structures. You wouldn't need any more than this. Then just take a handful of compost and fill in any of the holes. That's how I sow my sweet peas. So good compost, good trays of things, sweet peas, a bit of seaweed extract or white spirit if you have a mouse problem, 1 to each module, 2 if you're using last year's seeds or you're not really sure of the quality. Soak it from the bottom up, put it somewhere warm until it germinates, and then take it out into cool and light. So my plants will stay in these modules until they have either filled them with roots, in which case I will transplant them into these. Now we've put 2 into one of these, or until we are past our last frost date. Now I'm in the middle of Scotland. Our last frost is usually the 2nd week in May, and that's when I tend to plant out sweet peas. Or I might plant them out right at the beginning of May and cover them with fleece, or watch the weather forecast really, really carefully. Though I would say it's not necessarily the frost that is a problem with growing here. It is the cold nights. If things are generally cold and the plants just go into the ground and they don't get going, that is when I begin to get a lot of slug damage, mice coming in just eating off the leaves and things. Whereas if it's slightly warmer and things are growing, and probably that there's also more food about, my plants tend to get left alone. So I'm just going to sow the rest of my seed that I have here in my fabric, and then tuck them all up somewhere warm until they germinate, and then they'll come back out into this unheated greenhouse until the end of April, beginning of May, when they'll go out into the garden. And I hope that I'll be able to do another video when we're at that stage. And in the meantime, happy sowing. I have put together a little instruction booklet about how I grow sweet peas, and you can get that underneath this video by signing up to my mailing list. So I will put the link there, and thank you very much for watching.